How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs beat writer for On SI and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Thank you guys so much for stopping in today as we're going to break down the expectations that I have going into the second preseason game for the Kansas City Chiefs against the Seattle Seahawks. As you guys know by this point, the Arizona Cardinals did take the first preseason game of the series, I guess, so to say, for the Kansas City Chiefs. They dropped it 20-17. However, if you gotta take the preseason with a grain of salt. You saw last preseason the Chiefs did not win a single game, and they went 15-2, 15-1, really, if you think about it, because that last game they didn't even seem like they tried to send out the corp for success. However, going into the second game, seeing how the first game was super close, I think that the second game has a potential of the Kansas City Chiefs being able to walk out with a victory. There's a lot of expectations that I have, especially jumping off of what we saw last time for the Kansas City Chiefs specifically. And the biggest one is that head coach Andy Reid, he told the media that the Kansas City Chiefs would have their 4 quarterbacks each take a quarter. But after Patrick Mahomes was out there for just one play, 1 pass, 1 reception, 1 touchdown, things just kind of went as perfectly as they could for the 2-time MVP that they just pulled him out of the game. Gardner Minshew then took over for the majority of the time being, as well as Bailey Zappi. However, I think that going into the second game, now that they're getting a little bit closer to the regular season, I would assume that there is more leniency of sticking to that agenda, meaning Mahomes gets the first quarter, Minshew gets the second, Zappi gets the third, Olajuwon gets the fourth. I think that there is a way that the Kansas City Chiefs, while they don't want to risk injury, I know that is a huge thing that they've got going on. They've already have a few players go down to injury thus far. If you missed that, be sure to go check out the podcast I broke down yesterday on how the Kansas City Chiefs signed a new player because of injuries. But I do think that you're going to see a lot more players that you didn't see against the Cardinals, against the Seahawks. For example, the big player on the receiving end of the football last time the Chiefs went out and played against the Cardinals was Robert Tonyan. He's most likely going to be out there again. He's a veteran of the game, but we didn't see Travis Kelce. I would say that how everything's progressing, training camp is coming to a close. They're going to have to get their reps in one way or another. Travis Kelce, more of the ones are going to start to be out there. That's what I'm kind of expecting to see. And I think that you guys should too. See a little bit more play from guys like Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce. You saw Noah Gray out there against the Cardinals. You can also throw him in there. And I think that would be more prominently, they would play more prominently alongside Patrick Mahomes, because that's going to be the kind of rotation that they're going to have. They've got to get used to it, especially against other teams. Now, I know that this is a franchise built on veterans who know how to play, with one another or alongside one another. I think that it's just crucial as you get closer, because that last preseason game is going to be held at Arrowhead Stadium. You're going to have to want to build the pieces, In my mind, that's how it should go. I would also assume that you would see more snaps being played from the rookies on the roster. You saw Josh Simmons out there for 11 snaps, and while he looked really good, he's still a rookie, and I still think that he's going to have to be out there. Additionally, though, in the rotation on the offensive line, I think that Jalen Moore has a very strong chance and maybe it will happen against the Seahawks. I think that Jalen Moore has a really strong chance to become that starting right tackle. He keeps bouncing around this offseason. People assume that it was going to be a left tackle battle between Simmons and Moore, but now it's kind of a right tackle battle, knowing that Moore can be moved around multiple spots on this offensive line, but he's kind of stepped in above Jawan Taylor. And then Jawan Taylor's been the kind of guy who's been more rotational. I think that if you give those guys the chance against Seattle, as well as against the Chicago Bears, that's the final game of their preseason before they take on the Los Angeles Chargers in week 1 in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that it would kind of give head coach Andy Reid, as well as the rest of the coaching staff, an understanding of what to expect from their offensive line. I think the offensive line looked pretty well in the first game against the Cardinals. However, you didn't necessarily see a whole lot of rushing attacks, not a whole lot of quarterback sacks. Jeffrey Bossa was the only man to have a quarterback hit against the Cardinals quarterback. I just think that things are going to kind of move progressively on the offensive line. And if you're going to have to at one point put out the ones in assuming that that's going to be the offensive line for the regular season opener. I think in my mind, I've talked about this on the podcast, you're going to have to go with guys like Kingsley Suamataia, Josh Simmons, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and then Jalen Moore on that offensive line to begin the season. That's just kind of the rotation that I see in my head, and I think that it's the best way for the Kansas City Chiefs to have that be an established offensive line to protect Patrick Mahomes or Gardner Minshew, whatever the quarterback is for that time being. It needs to be seen against the Seattle Seahawks. I understand that there's still going to be a lot of rookies playing in that game against the Seahawks. There's also going to be a lot of depth guys trying to still earn their spot. I understand that. There needs to be, though, a familiarity and consistency saying, we haven't played football in a long time, boys. Let's start to get these things under control as we get into the regular season. Let's play as if we were going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's play as if that this was week 1. Let's play as if that these games start to count towards our regular season record. And I think the best way to do that is to get an offensive line out there that the Chiefs Kingdom is going to be familiar with. The last thing I am expecting to see a lot of Omar Norman-Lott. I think that he's going to be a big player against Seattle, and they're going to be able to see a lot. I also jumping off of that, I am hoping that Noah Williams will be able to continue his success that he had against the Cardinals, as he has been the quickest riser of the draft class recently. While he got off to a really slow start, things are kind of looking up for Williams in the defense, whether you use him on special teams as a kick returner or if you just keep him in the rotational room for the cornerbacks. I think that those are the players, those are the things that I'm looking for against the Seattle Seahawks. That being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you should follow me over at Dom Minchella on X. I post and repost every single day. You're not going to want to miss any coverage as we continue to cover the preseason into the regular season. You can also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI. All of our stories get posted exclusively free for you. Chiefs Kingdom, Kansas City Chiefs on SI is the place to get your Kansas City Chiefs news. That being said, once again, I am Dominic Minchella. Be kind to one another, and I will see you tomorrow.